Going. Let's start. There we go. Okay, welcome to the March Northwest C++ user group meeting. Just a little note here. I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I was a little under the weather this morning, but I recovered enough. So if I'm not quite 100% on it, I've apologized ahead of time. So what we have tonight, our original speaker had a family emergency, so I put this together. It's actually a talk I'm doing for SRS this weekend, so I grabbed this and brought it in. Basically, chatting on ChatGPT. So it's basically an open chat session like we've done before. I do want to note this will probably be one of our last, if not the last, totally online event. Next month is Peter is going to be speaking on the C++ 17 library, if I remember right.
That is correct.
And we are going to move to a hybrid format is the plan. We will be meeting up in Microsoft's reactor room, which is where we originally were going to meet before COVID. We were literally going to be there the month COVID came out or broke out. So we're going to give that a try, and we'll go from there. So with that, let me do a little window rearranging over here. And oh, Chris, did anybody want to make any announcements for conferences or anything?
Most of the conference stuff is quieting down right now. All the submissions or the call for submissions are closed currently. The review process is going on for CPP North. If you had submitted that you wanted to do reviews, C++ now will be in the middle of May, and there's still room to attend. It's a bit smaller conference, but it's all the high-end people, a lot of really heavy library talks, internals. It's all the library authors from Boost and Standard C from all the years past. So you guys have seen some of the videos there. It's pretty high level.
Cool. Okay. With that, I will share a screen. So what I wanted to do, I put together a quick little slide deck to kind of introduce this. Do folks know what ChatGPT is in general? Anybody not know what ChatGPT is at this point? Okay. So just a quick little slide deck here to kind of, oops, you don't need that up there. That out of the way. Okay, so this is going to be an open discussion relating to ChatGPT, its various uses, strengths, weaknesses, social impact, pretty much what everybody or whatever anybody would like to talk about. First off, a little blast from the past. The older folks of us will recognize this. We've been here before. This is a screenshot of Eliza. This was 1966. It was a mock psychotherapist, and it was basically a similar type of thing. You typed in a phrase, and the computer would respond to you. And people kind of looked at this and said, "Hey, in a couple of years, it's we'll be taking the place of humans and all the various other same things we're hearing today." This was really, really simple. The first time I ran into it was on an Apple IIe, but you can still get simulators in the program and run it pretty much anywhere. So this is a screenshot of ChatGPT. I took these a while back. So essentially, the top part up here is you type in a phrase, tell me about Eliza. And this is what ChatGPT has to say about ELIZA. See, so next couple of slides are just a few captures I did. These are live. When we get going, I'll share a live ELIZA session. Yeah, that'll help. A live ChatGPT session, so we can try things out or do things live if we want to. One of the things I was playing with was I had a statistics question. So show me some mathematical examples of how to correlate one series of numbers to another. This is what it came back with, Pearson's correlation coefficient. And there's the formula. Next one was Spearman's rank correlation coefficient. And there was a third one. There's actually a third one I didn't capture. Oh, nope, I did, right there. Kendall's rank. And I basically went and checked all these, and these are correct. These are dead on and well formulated. So the next thing I was doing is I wanted a subroutine in Rust. I've been doing some Rust programming a little bit. Sorry, folks, but so I told it, create a function in Rust implementing Pearson's correlation. And it basically did a good job of that. If you go through this, you'll see that it actually implements the formula well. It's moderately well structured. It follows the Rust idioms pretty well. And it gives you a little blurb down at the bottom of, here's how you do it. So the next thing I decided to do, write a function in Rust to calculate a Spearman correlation. My first thought was, okay, this is basically an import statement in Rust. And it's like, oh, there's a library that does this. And it's called statistics 0.9. This is another piece of the import statement for Rust. So this tells you, kind of like Python, go get the statistics the library called statistics version 0.9, and it wrapped it into a little function for me, and off it went. There's a couple problems with this one. One, this isn't overly helpful. Why not just tell me call the library directly? And two, this library doesn't exist, much less 0.9. This is totally made up from who knows what. Another one is, this is actually for the SRS meeting, but we've got a person in our SRS meeting who's really into sumo bots. I told it to write a mini sumo bot program. And this is clearly not a program, but it gave a reasonable implementation of, here's what you would do to go about it. At a very simple level. Another topic, tell me how to make some chocolate chip cookies. Well, looks like a reasonable recipe. And the thing I find interesting with this, it put it into, a recipe format. Finally, we've been here before. So science fiction has taken up this topic quite a few times. This is a clip of elementary deer data where, the whole episode was kind of based on, well, does data really, have intelligence or just a really big memory? So with that, close this. And there's a lot. There's a live ChatGPT. I've got the some various other examples over here on the side, and we'll open it up to what anybody would like to talk about.
Peter wants to know about the pendulum swing and timing.
Let's see.
Yeah, but how does it work is kind of a general question. So if we could be more specific, that might help.
Okay, well, go ahead and tell me what you want to put in.
Oh, no, go ahead and type what you were typing.
Oh.
I was just going to say we can't just say, how does a pendulum work? We'll need to get more descriptive than that.
By the way, Christian has his hand up.
Okay. By the way, folks, actually, when I'm presenting, I can't see much of what's going on. So go ahead and just, speak
Okay.
up in this case.
By the way, Lloyd, can you zoom in any? The text is very, very small on my screen.
Okay. Let me switch the way I'm displaying.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt while you're presenting, but I was going to ask, I assume this is the 3.5 GPT. If you have you tried the 4.0 that just came out yesterday? Because it has.
Yeah, that's correct. This is the 3.5 GPT. I have not tried the 4.0.
Is there a way? I'm not familiar with Teams. Is there a way you can copy and paste in a group chat that prompt you had for the correlation Rust function? Because I can try it really quick in 4.0, see if it has been fixed. Because it had other problems that that 3.5 didn't get.
Which one with the Spearman correlation, or which?
Yeah, the one about what it hallucinated and it gave you a function that didn't exist.
Yeah.
I can try that in 4.0 really quick.
Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna have to stop sharing to get the chat window up. Okay. There's that one.
How do I get to see the chat window in this? I'm not a Microsoft Teams user.
I can't find it on mine either. I have a free account.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's not gonna let you share.
Yeah. Which actually brings up a whole nother issue. I got a nasty gram from Microsoft recently. They're going to start charging to use Teams.
Yeah, so that's annoying. I actually have a paid account on this, which I'm using. So they're going to charge everybody to use Teams?
Well, that wasn't really clear. If you have a free membership, I wasn't sure if that was just for hosting or if that meant you could connect with someone who had a paid account, which may make a difference next month when we're at Reactor.
Yeah, we're going to have to. Okay. If you find the note for that, send it to me. I'll take a look. That would be annoying.
Equally annoying is that I'm on this through the website. I have Teams, but my company has locked me out of my corporate, and Microsoft won't allow me to meet with my personal account.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
When passwords stop working, that's a bad sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, so here's the response from ChatGPT on how the pendulum works. Looks reasonable. Yep, regular pattern called harmonic motion. I learned it as simple harmonic motion, but that's okay. Shorter periods, yep. So let's take it to the next level. Ask it what the formula is. So I'm noticing a little bug on this at the moment. They used to put this new chat used to pick up a summary, and it's not doing that anymore. So. And okay, there it is. 2 pi square root L over G. Oops. Apologies for the cat.
So that doesn't appear to have the weight of the pendulum as a modifier.
Yeah. That's interesting. Let me grab my physics book.
What about the weight? The weight doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, I think maybe the weight doesn't matter. Let's see.
I mean, the weight you put on the bottom affects the effective length because the center of gravity moves down or up, but
Yeah, the pendulum I have has a little thing on the bottom of the screw that you can turn. As you turn that screw, it'll go slightly slower and slightly faster. And as you turn that screw, what's happening is the center of the weight is moving slightly up and down. So the actual length of the pendulum stays the same all the way from top to bottom. It's just the weight that's moving. So what I'm trying to figure out is how that weight moving affects the period of the pendulum.
because
Right.
it affects L. L is not actually the total length, it's the effective length.
That may be true, but that's not what ChatGPT told us.
Yep. So the formula is basically correct. I've got a slightly different form. It's one over the frequency instead of the time, but that's pretty much the way I asked the question. And let's see.
I have a, oh, now I can't remember the name of it. When you're playing music, I feel so stupid.
Do you mean a metronome, maybe?
Yeah, yes. I have one of those old metronomes that is a pendulum, right? If you can't change the timing of it, it would be worthless.
Yeah.
You know, so they've certainly left something out of that formula.
Well, it's kind of an inverted pendulum, right?
Well, maybe you're right. Maybe it's not a pendulum. I guess you have to wind it up and there's a spring. So I guess that's something different.
Well, but the position of the weight up or down the
Yeah.
support is what affects the period.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's see.
Yeah, so that would affect the center of gravity, which then might be interpreted as to the length to where the center of gravity is.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Which could be the same thing on your cuckoo clock.
Yep.
So therefore, a little piece of tape on it might affect it.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
So-
all depending on what L means here.
Yeah, let's see. So L, let's see. Looking at my physics book here.
Well, why don't we actually ask OpenGPT is how does weight of the pendulum affect the period?
Oh yeah, good question.
All right. Let's see what that says.
You have to scroll down.
Yep.
It lost its scroll.
Okay. And here's one I'm going to give it. So looking at my physics book, the formula that it gave us is called the simple pendulum period. There's an exact equation. So this is the one we've got is a approximation good for deflection smaller than 15 degrees.
Right. I think you get into something evil like calculus or trigonometry if you don't
It's nasty.
restrict it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like it didn't change much.
That is flat wrong.
So speaking of being wrong, Lloyd, the Rust code you got that looked reasonable, did you actually try to compile it?
No, I actually ended up not using it. Did you see an error in it?
No, I was just curious because it looked good, but was it?
So I didn't actually try to compile it. What I did was I went through and matched it to the formula, and that worked. That looked correct.
I emailed you, Lloyd, what GPT 4.0 generated for the Spearman correlation.
Oh, cool. Which email did you send it to?
At Cyberdata,
Cyberdata? Okay.
the one from which the announcement came.
Yep. All right. And let's see, let me switch windows. Okay, so there's the Spearman correlation. And okay, this is C++. Oh, no, wait a minute. Yeah, this is Rust code. Sort by ranks the vec. Yeah, it's definitely better than it did before. Let's see, rank wise. I don't know the formula off the top of my head, so just kind of looking at the structure of it. That actually looks much better. Spearman correlation. Yep, and it checks for basically match is like a switch statement. So, and this is the way you some and none. Now, that's interesting. So in Rust, that's actually a bit, well, let me take a look for a second. It chose to use what's called an option. More appropriately for the way this is done, you would use a result, which would return an error code or return an error. So this would work, but none when you're intending an error code is not really the right thing to do. Well, though it would work. So it's close, but not perfect.
At least it didn't tell you to use a crate that doesn't exist.
Exactly. Yep. So I'll take that's a pretty good improvement. So this will be. Let's see. I'll switch back to the other screen. Yeah. Thanks for doing that. Wait.
Since this is a C++ users group, see, I can't read Rust. I don't know anything about it, but maybe we could ask it to write a C++ program.
Yeah, let's do that.
I actually have a little bit of feedback on that. I'm currently writing a talk on design patterns, and I'm going to be giving it a couple of places this year. And so just to play with it and check it, I asked it to write some C++ code for different design patterns, and it actually came up with several really good examples of what I was looking for. And most of the time it compiled. There were a couple times when it had some forward declarations or some undefined uses, but by changing the order of class declarations, most of it cleaned up and it ran as expected.
So here's the question I've got on this, and I don't know how GPT-4 is going to handle this, but the pattern I've seen so far is if I ask it to write some code, it can do it if that's something I could reasonably find in like an open source repository or something like that. If I ask it to write something that is not likely to be found in some open source where you could just look it up, it seems to stumble. which kind of gave me the impression, hey, this is a great tool for helping you find example code, but not necessarily create new code.
Well, I think for the stuff that I was doing, it actually took, a couple dozen different examples and munged them together and came up with a combined answer that was somewhat correct as far as
Yeah.
and uniform as far as the way it was using it and what the subjects were and the variables and stuff, and or the overall topic of what the problem was it was trying to solve.
Yeah. The other thing I found that was interesting, I didn't do this with code, but I did it with the chocolate chip cookie recipe. So here's the first one I did. So this is something I'm not quite sure how and why they're doing this. So I basically tell me how to make chocolate chip cookies. Okay. And when you go through here, notice the ones right off the top are 2 tablespoons of vanilla extract. And down here, it tells you
Teaspoons.
Teaspoons.
per teaspoons. And preheat the oven to 350 degrees. Okay. On another session, let's see if it's going to bring up my other session. There we go. On another session, so an independent request, I said, show me a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. Double check something. Did I do that exact? Oh, this is it. Okay, I did not give it the exact same thing. So one's tell me how to make chocolate chip cookies. And the other one is show me a recipe for chocolate chip cookies. Here it has 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And notice it's spelled out instead of abbreviated. And then down here, it tells you preheat to 375. Now, I suspect both would work, but it is interesting that it's got a slightly different output. So I think that, that goes to your comment, Chris, that, it's kind of munging stuff together a bit. And it's also very sensitive to,
Yeah.
what do you ask it, and exactly how do you
Right.
ask the question?
One other thing that I found is when you have a particular session going on and you've asked it multiple different questions, it saves a state and it builds upon the states. And after a certain point in time, it goes insane and crashes.
Yep.
And it makes you go to a new session saying,
Yeah, I've had that too. And specifically, so has anybody done some reading on how this thing actually works? I've done some of that. And it's actually what it's doing. The only thing it's doing is predicting the next token in a series. So the way I understand this, and I could be wrong, but the way I understand it works is you put in a request, right? And then it actually predicts the next word. So it breaks this request into tokens. And from what I can tell, tokens roughly, they're kind of along the lines of a syllable. I don't know if that's a perfect analogy or not, because there's some spacing and stuff in there, but they're kind of like a syllable. And then probably a statistical analysis based on that. But what it does is it takes this, breaks it into tokens, then it starts generating tokens, and it's iterative. So, the next token it generates may be Sir. Then it runs that. The next token would be Tenali with the next, and you see this when it's kind of building this thing out, as it kind of iteratively goes over the text. And when you get a session, it feeds the whole session. So it's only taking little steps, adding 1 token at a time to the entire session. That's the way I believe this thing works. Which means it really does not have any concept what it's saying per se. It's just, it's I feel like it's analogous to your almost like to a an auto completion in coding. It's giving you what it thinks is the next best prompt, and it's just really darn accurate the way it does it.
My understanding is also the difference between the GPT-3 and the GPT-4 is that it's like 1,000-fold times the number of sites and content that it has sucked in and digested.
Oh,
So it just
okay.
has an incredibly more massive library. They might have a slightly better algorithm also, or newer algorithm. So it just has a bigger experience base to draw from.
Do you remember? I haven't seen it yet. Has anybody seen how many parameters GPT-4 uses?
I think it's like over 1,000, where the other one was like 250 or something like that. I
Oh
mean,
no, that's sites or something. This is the essentially the weights in the neural network. Three, what is this? 3.5 is like 1.6 trillion parameters, if I remember right. So it's the model size.
Ask it what happens to the cookies if you leave the salt out.
Okay.
yeah, in the same chat.
Same chat. Okay.
Yeah, because it has a context.
So
I don't think that's entirely accurate. That's probably something they picked up from some cookbook that was biased. I believe the salt is needed for chemical reaction for some of the other ingredients to properly bind and rise properly.
Yeah, I make my own bread and I make it salt free, and the only thing happens is that it rises quicker and then it falls before it is finished baking.
Yep. I
But
also make my own bread,
that.
and that's exact. Yeah, and salt there, I know because I've looked it up. Salt there it's a moderating factor on the growth of the yeast. So what you're describing is exactly right.
Well,
Yeah, does it kind of poison the yeast?
Yeah, essentially right. Well, it's not really poison, but it restricts the growth of the yeast.
Yeah.
I wasn't paying attention to the recipe, but was there baking soda listed in there? Because that would actually supply some sodium for it.
Yeah. 1 teaspoon baking soda, and essentially baking soda for that releases the carbon dioxide via just a chemical reaction. It's not a live growth type thing.
Right.
So I wonder if it's smart enough if you ask for a vegan recipe.
Okay. Try that.
Actually, purposely give it a question that doesn't have specific context, where it would have to infer from what the previous conversation was. Yeah, how would I make it vegan?
How would I make a
No, just say make it vegan.
I'm sure I picked it up. Let's see. There we go. So I'm not vegan per se, so I don't know what's allowed and what isn't. Does that look reasonable to somebody who would know about that?
No
Yeah,
animal product.
that looks good. You might have trouble. Well, you can find vegan chocolate chips. Yeah.
Which isn't entirely accurate because all chocolate has insects in it. The process, the FDA actually allows a certain amount of insects in chocolate because
Well,
when they grind cocoa beans in specifically South America or Central America, they do it out on big tarps in the field.
Yep.
And bugs crawl in there, and when they collect them all, there's some bugs that have crawled onto the tarps.
well, even peanut butter has a certain amount of bugs in it.
Yeah.
And so does flour.
So is it vegan if the animals volunteered?
Yeah. Hey, I have a strict rule. I only eat animals that eat vegetables, except for fish.
Well, some of them eat vegetables, kind of.
Well, no, but I mean, as far as, I don't eat jaguar or things like that. Cattle eat pretty much vegetable stuff, and
Yeah.
pigs will eat anything, though. But yeah.
Oh man.
Are you
Okay.
sure you really wanted to record this?
I'm now questioning my decision. I'll put it that way.
So, in the context of using it for coding, I had a similar, I think, I forgot who said that it seems like it depends on the inputs. Like, if I ask questions related to some super popular programming language, like Python, for example, it almost always gets it right. If I ask it to do a simple script, take a SQLite database, and here's the schema, do this, do that, saves a lot of time, gets it right. C++, mixed results. I had some interesting, I asked it to refactor code so that instead of pointers to use references,
Okay.
or ask it to templatize parameters. Some things worked, some didn't. Like it made up parameters that did not exist in the original code. I needed some help with writing SIMD code, AVX code, complete fiasco. It generated code that didn't work.
Have you tried something similar to that with GPT-4 yet?
Not just yet. It came out yesterday, but I saw the live presentation they gave, and right, there is this thing that if you work with an API that changes rapidly, it will not know that it's out of date. Right? GPT 3.5 would not know. For 4.0, he did it live. He had exactly that use case, and he pasted a big chunk of documentation saying, here's the updated documentation for this function, and it was able to pick on it and correct. And also, it's not available just yet, but it's coming soon. 4 is going to be multimodal. In other words, you can paste images in there.
Yeah, I'm curious to see how that works.
And that's a useful function. I tried, I used it, for example, since I don't know the pandas framework in Python. And I said, I need to write a script that will build a graph that shows me a histogram of my data distribution. And then it built it, and I felt like, oh, now I want to show you how the picture that you helped me build looks like. But 3.5 didn't have that feature. I'll be curious in 4.0 when I say, now here's the image, what do you think? And see if it picks up outliers or other interesting insights on the visualization of the data.
So you're using, you've got a Plus account, right, with GPT?
Yep. Yeah, but it's only $20 a month, and I didn't use it for work because they only recently changed terms and agreements that they would not use your code. You know, I don't want to put my employer's code in there.
Yeah, exactly.
but I do enough hobby projects that I thought it's interesting, and yeah, I don't have social media accounts or anything like that, so I thought, yeah, if I need to spend, if I'm gonna have a subscription, this one is worth it.
Yeah, I put in, I've thought about it, but similar to you, I'm not going to put any of my work code in there because it's aerospace and comes under ITAR. So that's a
Yeah,
really
exactly.
big no.
Yeah, they say they changed that, but who knows, right? I mean, it
Yeah.
goes in the big cloud, so yeah, rather be safe.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we do not want the North Korean coming in and saying, "How do I build a rocket?" and ChatGPT telling them, "Here's how you do it." And by the way, here's the coordinates you want to use it on. Yeah, not a good one.
I think if North Korea asks how to build a rocket, they'll be told how to build an Estes rocket with F engines.
Let's find out.
Are you going to tell it you're North Korean?
No, of course I wouldn't tell it that. Well, it got one thing right. Started with the requirements. So one of the things I did with GPT-3, or the current GPT, is I actually did run it through my interview questions that I would use. I've got a standard set of interview questions I use when hiring. I didn't put them in the slide deck, obviously, because I didn't want to. I didn't want my interview questions publicly posted so everybody I interview from now on knows exactly what the answer is. But it basically passed. It passed my interview, and it generally did better than most of the humans I interviewed. So it would have gotten hired, which I thought was interesting. So yeah, this is entertaining. Define the requirements, design the rocket, build the rocket components, assemble the rocket, test the rocket. uh,
Not real specific.
Not real specific.
That's like, how do we obtain world peace?
Start with a world.
Yeah.
What that has to say. So this is interesting because different people are clearly going to have different views on this, and it's clearly giving you a biased response. Not that I've got anything against democracy, but not everybody on the planet would agree with that statement.
Yeah. Yeah, which has been one issue with this. If some of the material it sucks in is biased, it will give biased answers. And they've actually found several answers that were rather bigoted when people asked questions. And another way of, your exact line there, number 6, of achieving world peace is an ultimate dictatorship.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Forcibly make everybody live in peace.
Yep.
Yeah.
So this
And
is
that's
actually,
all value judgments on which ones it happened to have found.
yeah. The other thing that comes to mind, Chris, from what you were saying. So this was probably 5 years ago. I was working on a project, and obviously won't say who or exactly for what, but we were doing a survey of speech recognition packages. And specifically, we were looking at how well the packages work with children's voices. So one of the biases that gets into the speech recognition is it's mostly generated for adults, right? Most of what they train on is adult voices. and those are quite different than children's voices. And without saying who or what or which, the what came out of it was very interesting because several of the packages we evaluated when given children's voices had very clear, when they screwed up, had very clear biases in what they would say. One of them tended to, when it got it wrong, tended to promote its, its owner's company. It would stick the owner's name in there quite a bit. One of them, I'm trying to remember, there's three of them that really stood out. What in this way? One of them, clearly had its own company's, had been trained on its own company's database. Therefore, that company name was quite prevalent. The other, one of them was just a pervert. I mean, it came back with stuff, and this was for a child's toy. It came back with stuff that you would definitely not want to put in front of a child. And I think the other one, I seem to remember, just got hostile. And this was just simply doing speech to text conversion. There was no question answering or no database behind it. It was just, here's a sample of speech, convert it to text. And you could see the bias in the training even with something that direct.
I have multiple Alexa devices, and I am really fed up with how bad its answers are on certain things. If I ask it, I have to turn the sentence inside out and backwards to get a different response, which will be entirely even more wrong. I would really like to see a ChatGPT back end on a smart speaker.
So
Just to be able to
there is an API called Whisper from OpenAI. If you're using the Python API, they have a speech. I haven't tested it yet to see how well it works.
Years ago, Microsoft abandoned their smart speaker attempt, which I actually own several of those also. So I wish they wouldn't have killed it when they decided to buy into this, because I think you could get some really good answers. It wouldn't be the multi-page answers, if you could train it for the smart speaker to give just like a 2 or 3 word answer. It unless you ask for a big long dictation. The other thing I found with the free GPT was if you ask it for a really long, complex answer, it gets to a certain point and just cuts you off and says too long. Maybe if you have the paid account, it works better.
So one of the things I tried, to your comment, Chris, I didn't actually use the API, but I wanted to try the use case that you described of speaking to it and having it, generate the answer. There's a really easy way to do that if you happen to have an iPad. Just bring ChatGPT up in whatever browser you've got, and then use Siri on the iPad to enter the text.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a real simple way of prototyping the use case, and it worked reasonably well. I don't know about you folks, but I find talking to the device is sometimes unnatural. I suspect that's just me because I'm so used to a keyboard. But
Not just you.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually take on the Star Trek persona that every now and then I'm walking to a room and I'll ask a question, and they always do this on Star Trek. They always look to the ceiling to ask a question, right? When they talk to the computer, So.
Yeah, I have a hard time bringing myself to say, "Hey, Google."
And now we've just activated every Google device for anybody who ever listens to this podcast.
You're welcome.
Or to this recording.
Which,
For even those of us that are in the meeting, I had to reach over to cover my phone speaker or microphone.
Which actually I've kind of wondered about that. every now and then I'm watching some television show, and they always go after they play some musical artist, they cut to a clip of saying, if you want more of this music, ask, hey Siri, play me so and so, you know, which I'm imagining millions of Siris around are all of a sudden hitting the database to
Yeah.
supply that query. I've wanted to get Alexa and Siri in a fight with each other.
So
Have them
people
argue back and forth.
There's a
have
New
done
York Times article in Today called "How Siri, Alexa, and Google Assistant Lost the AI Race," and basically the article says how those voice-activated AIs don't use the same kind of large database or whatever, and it's impossible for them at this point to rewrite Siri or Alexa to use a ChatGPT type of database. It's a really interesting article. You should go look it up if you have access to New York Times.
So to your point, one of the things that happened, I think it was the Google device. Peter, you could probably correct me on this, but Burger King took advantage of exactly that in one of their ads, and I think it was Burger King. Basically, in the ad on the TV, activated everybody's device to give them more information about the product they were selling.
I think what happened is it asked them to look up what a Whopper was, and it
Yeah.
used the Wikipedia entry, and all of a sudden a whole bunch of people went to Wikipedia and changed the definition of what a Whopper was, and what it was saying was getting stranger and weirder and worse, and Burger King pulled the ad.
Okay. Yeah, and I did hear after that the advertisers put it's like a watermark or something in the ads when they're broadcast so that the devices won't activate on them. So there is actually a blocking technology they added to the systems for that. I don't know quite the detail of what it was, but yeah, I found the Whopper thing was just absolutely hysterical.
Yeah. Well, I've always worried about, what if you leave the TV on and leave the room and the TV goes, hey Alexa, order me 1 million burgers, right?
Yeah.
And see what shows up in half an hour, right?
So I was actually at a security talk, and they were again, I can't remember if it was Google or Siri. I can't remember now. But it was one of them that was tied into a door lock. And what they found is somebody, if they saw a window open, would yell in the window, hey, whichever, open the front door. And the system would then proceed to do so. It's one of those use cases when you're building the thing, if you really don't think about how people are going to use it, you're going to get in trouble.
I don't know which it was, but there are some devices out there that are trainable to only respond to certain voices or certain commands on certain voices.
Yeah. Google's device is that way because it's a profile thing. My wife and I have ours set up like that. So
And my device has a speaker profile, so it knows who's talking to it. So if you ask like for your schedule for the day, it knows which person is asking.
Yep.
Yeah. In general, I've been pretty impressed with ChatGPT. I am fed up with the users of it, though, that have to post on LinkedIn different posts that they put on there or riddles where they said, see, I'm smarter than ChatGPT. If I managed to give it a riddle that it couldn't answer. So, anybody posts those in any of my groups, they immediately get the boot.
So one thing that I've been hearing is that it does okay with short programs, like about interview question length, but if you ask it to write something much larger, it seems to struggle. Have any of y'all heard that or experienced that?
Yeah, that was exactly that was exactly this example I gave it of the SumoBot program. This is a fairly straightforward type of program. So it's not super huge. It would run in a microcontroller, for instance. But it doesn't even generate code. And that, that's kind of why I included this particular example.
When I used it to generate code, I always specifically ask it, show me C++ code to do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, give it more specific, what I was looking for. I didn't try the others of just, write me a program to do this, because I don't want it to start feeding me Visual Basic or something.
Yeah, I was thinking it would all be JavaScript.
COBOL.
There you go.
Man, where would I even find a Visual Basic compiler? I think I've got a disk upstairs for like Visual Basic 4. I wonder if my computer will still read the CD.
Somewhere I still have a disk for Turbo Pascal 1.
Ooh. I think
You
I just
have
threw out
the
my
manual.
floppies for those.
Yeah, I used to have the manual for it. I'm not sure where that went.
You're the one that bought it, huh? I had a pirated copy. That was like 1986.
Something like that.
Yeah. And you could only compile a 64K program?
Yeah, the generated .com files.
Right. Well, if you had more than 64K source, you had to do an include in it, and you would keep easy chaining them together.
Okay. Yeah, my first job actually came along because I knew both C and Turbo Pascal. A guy had written some code and it was supposed to be ROMable, but it turns out Turbo Pascal is self-modifying, which does not do well in a ROMable device, in a ROM device.
I just gave it a very simple, hey, write me a web server. Write a web server in C++. And I don't know Boost ASIO libraries. It looks reasonable.
Yeah. That is probably something that it could find from direct sample code, though.
Yeah, I suspect so. Trying to think what would be a good. Trying to think of something we could give it that would be along those lines. It would be reasonably complex, not exorbitantly complex, but something you wouldn't find in an example.
If you did a web server for buying tickets on Ticketmaster, the Taylor hat.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's do this. Okay, write a program. Server. See what it does with that. Okay, it basically says, I can't do this, but here's how you would.
Yeah. To get the Ticketmaster API, you have to sign an NDA.
Yeah. Yeah, it got that. Terms and policies. Yeah.
It cut and paste that from somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's try this. Um,
I've also thought about, I wonder how well it handles typos and homophones and things like that. There, and there. If it's able to smart enough to figure that out.
It can't write an algorithm for CPPCon either.
Hey, I have the algorithm that does the scheduling. It's
Hang
written in
on to it.
Python. John did it, and we have to modify the source every time we want to fight with it. And you have to enter all the constraints as
Okay, so just a note, folks, we are at about 8:07. Do people want to keep going, or want to wrap up, or what would you like to do?
Well, do people have comments as far as what direction they want to forecast this is going to go in?
I'd like to see at least one C++ program that it can write.
Oh, okay, it actually did that. So let me. I deleted the session, but let me go back and do it. I'll do this one.
Well, besides just calling the boost library.
Let's see if we can come up with a good one then.
You could have it ask for the characteristics of a pendulum and give you the period.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it gave me some pretty good answers for design patterns of in C++ code. Oh,
I would imagine there's a pretty massive number of
yeah, design patterns. There's a lot out there. I mean, the source of all the books and stuff. It's just going to cut and paste in the formula. Yeah.
Okay.
So it writes slowly to pretend it's thinking really hard.
No, progressively, one word at a time.
Yeah, you're actually, from what I understand, I don't think they're faking that. I think you're actually seeing every little blip is the neural network running again and producing a new token.
If you look at the API, there is a boolean there that says specifically stream or show me everything all at once.
Okay.
It's probably also a throttling mechanism to keep your answers coming at a slow rate. So in case they get a whole bunch of hits at the same time, you're not going to see a speed difference. Everybody else is interlaced in between your sleep periods.
So this is interesting.
I find it interesting that it writes it in sort of a C style with the variables all at the top.
Mm-hmm. The other part I find is interesting is it's asking you to enter the acceleration due to gravity. So let's try this.
Well, what if you have a pendulum on the moon, right?
Right.
You never know.
Well, right.
So
Then the acceleration is 8 times less.
To assume Earth.
I'm going to assume Earth or assume the moon.
Well, if we assume Earth, we'll be able to tell right away if the number is correct. The moon, I'm not sure what it actually is.
That's probably
on Earth at sea level or something. There.
Okay, looks like it got it.
I thought it was like 9.79 or something, not 8.1 or the 9.81.
No, that is at sea level.
No, it's not. I always remember it's 9.8 meters per second squared.
Yeah.
Hang on. I've got the physics book. I will look on the front page for the constants.
It would be nice if it declared gravity const. That program could get buggy if you start modifying it.
Well, you could really kind of get into it and ask it about what the pendulum gravity would need to be at the top of Mount Everest versus at the bottom of the ocean, right?
Yeah.
Because bottom of the ocean, you all of a sudden have hydro friction to deal with.
Mm-hmm. So G is defined as, at least in my book, 9.806 meters per second squared.
So
it's It's correct, rounding, but correct. But yeah, it really should declare that const.
So one of the things that I want to talk about a little bit is I've been listening to a podcast called Security Now. And on that podcast, they've been mentioning that malware authors have been using ChatGPT to say, how would I write a phishing campaign? Now give me a sample letter I would send. How do I write certain kinds of malware? And it's actually spitting out the malware for them. So one of the interesting things that this has done is really lower the bar for script kiddies who want to get us into trouble.
Yep.
Well,
Yeah,
save
and
you
it
the
will write
10
it without, it will write it with correct English grammar, so it doesn't look like it was written in some other country.
Yeah, I was going to say, to do it accurately, it would have to look like it was written somewhere else.
Well, now that brings up a whole nother question. How well can it answer questions in other languages? If you want the answer in Polish or something.
I
Right?
tested it with Romanian. It did pretty good, pretty well. I asked it to write a speech in the style of the former Romanian dictator Nicolae Ceausescu bemoaning the state of social media today. And it didn't follow the guy's speech patterns, but it grammar was okay, and the cultural time frame was all right.
Yeah, I saw several examples of where they asked it to write something in the style of Trump, and then the same thing in the style of Obama, and it actually came up with some pretty, what looked like it would be some comedian doing a Trump impersonation.
Yeah,
Like
but
greatest ever, right?
it comes. Yeah, this is I think what looking. Has anybody tried looking under the hood of this thing? And there have been some copycats out there publishing open source libraries? Looks like the training and the architecture of the transformer network is pretty well understood. It's just you need to give it the data, and you need to have a truckload of GPUs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty much true about any AI. It's how you train it is how good your answer is you're going to get back.
Right, but if it trains, right, this was a question I heard mentioned somewhere. If everybody follows this bubble and they copy the algorithm, and at some point, they will all converge, right? Because the amount of human knowledge on which it trains, it doesn't seem to be able to create original thought, to reason.
Yeah,
It's
that's
kind of like
exactly the pattern I'm seeing with it. It can regurgitate whatever it's trained on, and it may, blend whatever it's trained on. But
it's
it
almost
doesn't create anything beyond that.
I forgot it goes back to Kant, right? The critique of pure reason, like how much new stuff can you infer if you don't have first-hand experience, right? How much you can learn from synthesized other learning rather than interacting with the world directly. And if all of these systems feed on the same body of knowledge, at some point there's going to be some convergence potentially, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the interesting. There's been a lot of chat or a lot of talk of, hey, it's going to replace software engineers and such. And I don't know. I tend to work more in the more the research and development type areas where we're just by the nature of what we're doing new things all the time. And it's in my mind, it's like, yeah, it's a helpful tool to get you started, but if I can look it up like that, I'm just going to use the library anyway. So it's not really, it's not replacing what I do per se, but it could make me considerably more efficient.
Right. Well, it won't replace engineers. It might replace coders, or may strongly assist them so that they are halfway redundant. Because I mean, if you have to come up with original thoughts that are beyond the experience of the computer, you know, and solve a problem that there is no solution for already, some unique answer. But if it's just writing a form for, pick on Visual Basic again, you know, or some web form for, you know, doing a website, you know, there's millions of examples of that that it
Exactly.
can draw from.
Yeah.
And there's
and-
millions
like-
of. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It seems like most of the work that I do is in the middle of a big layer of a bunch of layered software. So maybe I'll be in layer 4 writing an interface that does something little and then calls layer 5. So that's something I have a hard time believing it would understand the layers well enough to really assist with. So what if I wanted to do is just like sort this list of integers in a certain way? I bet it could give me a great answer. But if what I'm really trying to do is route a notification properly in the middle of a complex system, I think it's going to be a while before ChatGPT is there.
Yeah.
Now, it's hard to say how good it will get.
No, I think, you know, fundamentally at some point it will, you know, you could duplicate everything at some point in the future. But when you do so, it's not just going to be software engineers, it's everybody's out of work.
Yeah.
Because
No,
you know, once you can create an arbitrary program, or a program of arbitrary complexity, well, fine. You just ask it to replace, to create a program to do whatever task you happen to want done.
Yeah.
Well,
Something that might be an interesting task is if you actually have AIs controlling what other AIs ingest. So if it avoids some of the bias factor on stuff. If you have an AI that detects if it's, white supremacist and not include that, either too left or too right, or
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
this is the beginning. I have a feeling that we're going to see more diversification in the way this is used and in the business models. I think one business model would be to offer training for, right? So you expose your infrastructure of GPUs and your server farm to allow other businesses train models on a very domain-specific data set, and they keep their data private, right? Like, for example, you have a medical, something that's very specific or specific to engineering. And then, because I have a hard time seeing how a general model, like I know for sure because I've tried it, it's pretty bad at playing chess. It has not been trained on a subset of just chess games.
Sargon is safe.
But yeah, exactly. But it could be done, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's probably ingested every chess manual out there, but it can't produce the sequence of thoughts for strategy, of look ahead, and to weight the different possibilities between different branches of the game.
Right. Well, that's one thing that it definitely does not do, is it does not recurse over its own answers. So, for instance, with the let me pull this one up real quick again, because that's why I included this in the slide deck. Basically, how do you create a mini SumoBot program? Sensor input, decision making, actuator output. Okay, now if I wanted to, I could come back and say, dive down on the sensor input, dive down on the decision making, dive down on the actuator output, and that's going to give me probably another list. And then you dive down, on each of those. As a human, we build this list and then we recurse over each section, and then we recurse over that until we get to the level of detail we need. It clearly doesn't have that capability yet.
Well, maybe the question you asked was so general. If you specifically made it for more of, write me a mini sumo bot for Arduino.
Try that. I'm going to do this in a new session.
I mean, because before you just said write me this, it didn't know what controller you were going to put that on. But if you're going to say Arduino, that narrows it down a little bit to probably an Atmel. And you might actually have to
No.
get to the point of where you specify certain sensor inputs and motor controllers or something.
Yeah.
No, you should leave the typos in to see how well it does.
Yeah.
Well, let's do that one first and just see what it does.
You might actually need to specify what the type of interface was from the inputs.
Yeah.
Now it's going to give you a no answer.
Yep. Well, it's actually looking like it might give me some code.
Oh,
It's
okay.
giving me a nice disclaimer for it first.
There again, they're not const.
Much less const expert.
Ah.
Your Sumo bot apparently has a long serial extension cord.
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay, this is interesting. This is more detail than I was expecting it to do.
Well, the moment you say Arduino, it knows it has to do a setup in a loop, and there are sample code for it. High, low. Let's see. Primitive logic of sensor 1 and 2 for outputs 1 and 2. It's operating on tank controls.
Well, that's something. It probably wouldn't win our contest, but
It's
I'm
kind of
gonna save
interesting.
that one.
It's kind of interesting to me that it actually has comments.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, well, it just picked them up from somewhere.
Yeah.
How about if you modified it to make a sumo, mini sumo that did a line following? How it would handle that?
Oh, this is interesting. Look at this. Error in body stream.
Maybe you hit the length or something.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do this.
Actually, that's not that long. So.
Now, let's do this and give it a line following. On pin 3 through 5.
You might need to specify line following robot.
Yep.
Well, by the way, when I disappeared there for a little while, did anybody else's teams crash, or was that just me?
I think it was just you.
Oh, it probably just, yeah, it took me a long time to get back in because it refused to recognize that there was a meeting going on.
Oh, that's weird.
You forgot to tell it C++.
Well, he said Arduino.
Yeah, I
Which-
said Arduino, and that implies a C-like language.
Technically, it is actually C++. They
Oh, is
just stripped it. They just stripped out the headers
Oh, okay.
for the a lot of the C++ magic. That's how when you can create copies objects when you create them. It looks like it's doing a Java type thing, but it's actually copying them.
Something weird is going on with the syntax highlighting. For a while, they were going all red, but now they seem to be white and orange. And then it changed midway, flipping all the red things back to white.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't catch that. Yeah, it's it's reasonable.
Yeah, however, that is probably actually something that there are hundreds of thousands of examples of out there.
Oh yeah, totally.
So I think that that's the one question that every Indian university student has to do.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, they can buy them off the internet as solutions to every problem they ever need to do. Yeah, it did an okay job. However, I have heard about teachers and professors worrying about they're going to be getting back questions of pre-written programs. So there's going to be a whole counter business of having AI read a sample and say, "Did you write this?"
Yeah, exactly. And of course, then the more things people write, you're going to get a population that covers the available space well, and you won't be able to tell anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Which just means the prof's going to have to come up with new problems.
I would say the first clue would be, are they using the using namespace STD line?
Yeah, I saw that in a lot of examples that they use. Well, they didn't do it here, but in the other C++
They did do it
code.
in one of them. One of the
Yeah.
ones that was not too far back. They did in fact using namespace STD, which is
I saw that multiple times.
line.
Yeah. And from other things that I've asked it to do, which means it's pulling it out of some textbook that is a pre C++ 11. That was the old sloppy habits in those days.
I still see it in tons of online examples.
Well, for mini apps, it's okay, but the moment you end up ever using it on multiple different namespaces, especially
Yeah.
like that ASIO, I didn't notice if they did it there or not, but you're really asking for troubles with that. Did you save that ASIO web server?
Don't think I did. No, I didn't save that one.
Oh. Ask it which side lands down, the peanut butter side or the or not of toast. So you don't do your toast upside down?
Well, I've seen robots that try to do things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Both sides
So what-
sounds messy.
Yeah.
I wonder how it would deal with the paradox of dropping a cat down with a peanut butter toast on its back.
Yeah.
My cat left the room on that note.
One of the frequent questions I saw when people were trying to trip it up on things was Bob's mother has two kids. One is named Mary. What's the name of the other?
ChatGPT 4 fixed that. I tried it.
Oh, you did you? Oh,
Yeah.
Well, they probably went out and saw that.
Yeah.
Which actually would be an interesting thing for them to do, is take every wrong answer or every answer they get and feed it back into the question to see if it comes up with a confused answer, for them to know they need to refine the search on it.
The one that I thought was actually an excellent answer was, somebody said, how much is 2 + 2? It said 4, and it said, oh no, my wife thinks it's 5. And it said, well, I would defer to your wife because my training is only up to 2021. I thought that was excellent advice.
Yeah, I saw that question also. And that's more of, do you want to be happy or do you want to be right? Yeah.
Okay, folks, we're about 8:30 here, so I think there's no objection. Shall we wrap this one up?
Yep. Thanks, Lloyd.
Yep. Nope, thanks, everyone. And just a reminder, next month we've got Peter. I'll ping you, Peter, to get the normal update stuff. Oh, thanks for joining, everyone. We'll see you next month.
Did anybody notice Peter
Thank
lived
you.
long
Thank
and
you.
prosper? No, it's the, yeah.